What's up, guys? This is Nick from Arch City Poker, and in today's vlog, going to be continuing the Poker 101 series with how to play Ace King being today's topic. So, this hand is a widely debated hand amongst many cash game players. They debate its value pre and post flop. I think there's a lot of misconceptions with this hand. I think a lot of players, where the problem or where the problems arise with Ace King for many players is that they don't understand what type of pot this hand desires. They don't understand what type of pots this hand plays well in. They don't understand how to enter the pot as the first player in voluntarily. They don't understand often what to do when facing a raise or facing a re-raise when they are the raiser. So that's how I'm going to try to break this vlog down. There's probably a lot more to it than this quick 4 or 5 minutes, but I think these quick tips will really help you guys a lot the next time out in your session when you get Ace King. So the thing about Ace King is that it deserves a pot that's more so heads up, maybe three ways. And Ace King plays much better with a bloated pot pre-flop because post-flop you want to have a low stack to pot ratio, which really allows for you to commit easily with one pair. And the good thing about raising Ace King as the first player in, and I guess that's a good segue, is if you are the first to enter the pot with Ace King, always enter for a raise. It will allow you to possibly get the pot heads up or three ways. It will bloat the pot to where, especially if you're out of position, that'll negate the positional advantage of the players behind you. You also will often outkick your opponent's post flop. And many of them in these live low stakes games, if you guys are watching these videos, I assume that those are the types of games you guys are playing in. They will get married to a hand like King Queen on King 4-3 or Ace Jack on Ace 9-7, and you'll be able to outkick them. You'll often be able to get three streets out of them. So I think that you want to enter the pot with aggression, and try to get it more heads up. These top pair, top kicker types of hands do much better in heads up pots. Ace King suited, if you get multiple callers, it's not the worst thing in the world, as you obviously have the best suit and can possibly overflush somebody. But the hand overall, just more often than not, is either going to miss or make one pair. And that's the biggest misconception about Ace King, is how much showdown value it has as the best non-pair hand. If you raise pre-flop and you can get the pot heads up, on many dry, disconnected board runouts, your hand will be the best more often than not. Your opponent will miss just as often as you will, but your miss is going to be better because you have the best non-pair hand. So keep that in mind before you just pitch Ace King on a board that you miss on if your head's up and it's kind of dry. That hand is often very good. I think with Ace King facing a raise, you more often than not probably want to re-raise. It will get stacks. It will get the stack to pot ratio even smaller, which is even better for when you flop a pair. You can mix in some calls, especially against tighter opponents. I don't think three-betting Ace King against really tight opponents in the types of games you guys are playing in will do you a whole lot of good. I think that you can always three-bet it profitably, but you can mix in some calls, and you can possibly dominate an opponent with Ace Queen or Ace Jack that way. So I think a mixture of three-betting and calls is correct, but I think that three-betting and trying to get the pot heads up more often than not is going to be the correct way to go about it for everything that I said as far as being the first to enter the pot. You want to be heads up with this combo if you can, and you want to shrink the stack to pot ratio as much as you can. Now, as the raiser facing a three-bet, I would say, at least in most live low-stakes cash games, if you're facing an unknown opponent or a tight opponent, it's probably better off, especially out of position, to just actually fold this combo. Their range will be doing quite well against you. Either worst case scenario, you're probably dominated, and best case scenario, you're probably flipping against pairs like queens and jacks. A lot of players don't three-bet ace queen, so I don't see that combo quite often enough to justify four-betting. However, if you know your opponent is capable of four-betting hands like ace queen, or I'm sorry, three-betting hands like ace queen, or three-betting even light, so if you have a loose opponent, I think four-betting ace king is definitely the way to go. It kind of works for value and as a bluff somewhat, having the ace and king blocker, but it's just going to be better for you to take the initiative, try to get a fold right then and there pre-flop. And if you do see a flop, you often do have a lot of showdown value. You can c-bet and often get a lot of folds in these games. Calling a 3-bet, especially out of position with ace king, it doesn't work as well because you're going to miss most of the time. And check calling with ace king can be profitable in certain scenarios when you miss, but it's going to be a lot harder to play. And I don't think it's as profitable as 4-betting, trying to scoop the dead money pre-flop. If you get called, then you still have a chance to win the pot post-flop. So I like being the aggressor with ace king with a 4-bet if you are facing a more loose 3-better. But remember, keep in mind, you must know that your opponent is more loose for their 3-bets, because in live low stakes cash games and even in low stakes online games, I think a lot of players overvalue ace king in that sense. That's where I think some players overvalue ace king, is they pick it up and they just think, well, I'm just going to 4-bet or just go all in because I see players doing this on TV, or I see them doing this in bigger games, so this must be correct. However, you have to understand how the player pool and the dynamic is in your own game. And ace king often will not be doing very well against really aggressive lines and narrow ranges pre-flop. So I hope those tips help you guys out. There's a little more to it with ace king, and I think you just have to keep in mind, what kind of pot does my hand do well in? Ace king does very well in heads up pots. It does well with bloated pots, so there's a lower stack to pot ratio. And I think most importantly, just keep in mind how much showdown value that hand really has. Don't just pitch it as soon as you've missed the flop and you guys are on the turn, your opponent bets or something. Just keep in mind, if your head's up, the flop is really dry and disconnected, you probably have the best hand still. And so a lot of times you want to try to get the showdown a little more often than you guys probably are. So if you have any questions or comments, as always, let me know. I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. Until next time, this is Nick from Arch City Poker. Take care.